Well, it's time to move on to a new project. And that new project is going to be to build a little 3D printer. Now, this is something I've kind of, along with a whole host of other things, wanted to do for a while. It's going to be over a few videos. Basically, what's shifted me from dreaming about it and doing it is historically I've had lots of stuff 3D printed. I don't have any issues with the actual design part of it, 3D CAD and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I've been doing that for years. So yeah, I've been using sort of other people's or services to get stuff printed in the past, mostly SLS because I wanted that kind of quality. The issues that I've always had with building or having your own 3D printer is that really 3D printers fall into three different categories. You've got the cheap ones, which are sort of under $500 US. You've got the middle range, let's say between $500 and $2,000, and then you've got the good stuff above that, which has kind of been, you know, out of what I'm willing to spend on a 3D printer. Over the last year, I suppose, the one printer has in the mid-range has started to stand out. Certainly it's become very, very popular, and that's the Prusa i3, or the i3 Mark II as they have now, or even the i3 Mark IIs as they have right now. And for, I think you can get the kit for about $700 US, and you're looking at quality of print. Maybe some other things aren't quite as good, but quality of print is up with the much more expensive printers, maybe, you know, somewhere maybe even double the price. However, $700 US for the kit is still well outside of my price range. But the beauty of the Prusa is that it's open source. So basically everything they do is available for you on the internet to find out, have a look into, and if you want to, build your own version. So that's what we're going to do. Now, building a Prusa i3 copy is nothing new. There are many, many videos on YouTube. Many people have done the same thing. So this is going to be my take on it, if you like. I'm going to concentrate on the things that I'm going to do a bit differently, certainly to the ones that I've seen. And hopefully make it a little bit, you know, at least clarify some of the areas where somebody who hasn't built a 3D printer before, such as myself, might need a little bit more detail on. Who knows? My plan is to do this as cheaply as possible, with some caveats. I started out with a plan to do it as cheaply as possible, and I sort of sourced all of the parts, or found all the parts to do it as cheaply as possible. And I changed my mind during this sort of part hunting process for two reasons. The first reason was that you could spend a little bit more, and I'm talking maybe $30 US more, and improve a couple of the parts which are, I'm not going to say critical, but will make a difference to the quality, or could potentially make a difference to the quality of the print. And by spending that extra $30 US, you're getting the printer to much closer to the original Prusa. So really there should be next to or no difference in the quality of print, at least, maybe not the quality of build, but the quality of print between the clone I'm going to build and the original Prusa. The other reason why I'm not doing it as cheaply as I possibly could is because in order to do that, I needed to source a lot of the parts from AliExpress, or something like AliExpress. And again, a couple of reasons why I chose not to do that is that it can take an awful long time for things to come, and they may never arrive. And if they do arrive and you've got a problem, well, basically forget it. You're just going to have to order another one, wait another period of time, and hope for the best. So I started looking at alternatives for both of these reasons, really, or all three of those reasons. And I sort of discovered really that it would cost me an extra, let's say, $50 US. I would say something like that, to source none of the parts from AliExpress. I managed, after hours and hours of searching, to find a good proportion of the parts in the UK. Yes, they were nearly all more expensive. Some of them were a lot more expensive, and those ones I set aside. But the ones which were, you know, minimal amount more that I could get in the UK, basically nearly all on eBay. I did that because, well, eBay's pretty good in terms of accountability, generally speaking. You know, they've got ratings to keep up, so if you've got a problem, generally they're going to try and help you out or swap it. Also, delivery time much quicker. So that left a few parts that I think there was only one part, and I can't remember what that was. There was only one part I literally could not get in the UK. There were a handful of parts that were considerably more expensive in the UK than, say, on AliExpress, but I found all of those parts, I think, on Banggood, which is maybe somewhere between the two in terms of reliability and, let's say, support. So I bought those parts on Banggood, and yeah, of course it cost maybe a little bit more than AliExpress. But cut a long story short, I spent a bit more money to get the parts quicker and to, you know, just for a little bit of peace of mind, really, that if there was a problem with the part, I could probably get it changed relatively quickly. So all of these parts I have detailed on my website. I've made a list of all of the parts that I've bought, the prices of those, where I got them from, the actual link to the specific product that I bought it from, which in many cases might only be useful to you if you're in the UK or buying stuff from the UK. But yeah, it's exactly the parts that I bought even. And yeah, I've included in these lists. Again, it's all available on the website. The link is below in the description. The original plan, i.e. the prices with everything from AliExpress, or all of the parts I plan to get from AliExpress there. It includes the difference in price then for sourcing them from the UK or Banggood, and it also includes the price of some of the upgrades I'm going with straight away. I wouldn't, maybe not upgrades, but some of the things that I am not going as cheap as possible on in order to, yeah, keep it closer to the original Prusa i3. So as I said, I know next to nothing about FDM printers. I actually know a lot more about SLA printers or SLS printers, but next to nothing about you know, the common and garden squirt a bit of plastic down on a hotbed type printer. Now, yeah, I do know quite a bit about motion control systems. I also know quite a bit about microprocessors and development boards and programming and all that kind of electronics, a lot of electronic stuff. So really the only sort of gap in my knowledge, which is quite important when you're building a 3D printer, was the sort of the extrusion side of the extrusion, the hot end, and the firmware. So for that reason, you know, I've sort of scoured the internet a lot to find out, you know, the best way of doing this. And I came across a guy called Thomas Sandladerer, who is pretty big, I think, on the YouTube 3D printing world, in the 3D printing world on YouTube. And he did a series of videos, which again are also linked to from my website, which is linked to in the description, doing exactly what I'm doing. I'm pretty much exactly copying what he did, right down to I've used his original parts list, or bill of materials as he calls it, obviously an engineer, and I used that as the basis for mine. And then somewhere along, you know, watching his videos, looking at the parts list, that's where I decided to sort of vary a few things, just change a few things up. So I'm not going to really detail all of the things, you know, I'm going to make videos of the build, but I'm going to time lapse or skip over completely all of the sort of standard build bits. There's just no point in doing it. I don't really want to make multi-hour videos like there seems to be lots of people that do that. They're much better at that than me, and a lot more knowledgeable than me. So I'm going to skip over all of the sort of standard build procedure for this Prusa build, because you can get it from his videos, you can get it from many other videos, and you can also get it from the Prusa website and their own manuals. What I will detail though is where I'm doing things a little bit differently, certainly differently to Tom. I think that's what I can at least provide some value on, is some of the things I'm going to do differently, the reasons why and how I'm going to do them. So I'll sort of delve into those and kind of gloss over the rest of it. So initially I'm going to be doing a sort of bare bones build, which is exactly what Tom did, at least so far. I think he's got more videos on the clone Prusa coming, but he's done a sort of bare bones build where there's no LCD. You're running it directly from, you know, PC, laptop, whatever, and then I will move directly after I've got it up and running into adding some parts. The LCD screen, for example. We'll be adding Octoprint through a Raspberry Pi so I can control it over the network. What else? Some issues with power supplies, which I'll get to. The ramps board is pretty flaky. These cheap ramps boards, the polyfuses on them just aren't man enough for the job. So yeah, they pop. People talk about a potential to burn your house down. Yeah, there's a potential, but anyway, I don't want it to break. So as soon as the thing's up and running, I've already got all the bits to swap out the polyfuse with something else. I'll be swapping out the MOSFETs that come with the ramps board, and yeah, generally just sort of getting a few things upgraded straight away. And then at a slightly later date, or more to the point when it's available, I'll be swapping the heatbed out to the Mark 42 heatbed, which is one of the key differences between the printer I'm going to build and the original Prusa i3 Mark II and Mark IIs. Sadly, it's the only thing at the moment that's not readily available off the shelf. I'm going to wait until it's more generally available, i.e. from China, and cheap. And when that's available, I'll be upgrading the heatbed as well. And so I'm going to go through all of the parts that I've got here now very quickly. I'll probably cover them more in detail when I get to them, if it's really that important. First thing, and yeah, look at that, eh? This is my first upgrade from what Tom did. It isn't exactly beautiful, but it's it'll do the job. It's certainly very tough. It's basically two pieces of 12mm ply glued and screwed together and cut out in the for the Z-axis frame. So I got this out of the way, got it done first now because we're going to need it pretty much straight away. I kind of roughly sprayed it black, as you can tell. So yeah, there's that. I've got something to say about that, but we'll wait until we start with the build. So that is that. I'll move that over there. We've got some smooth rods, as they call them, or as I call them, linear rods. Yeah, got those. Well, yeah, you can see where I got those. They're all in the link. You can find out the prices, the exact links to where I got these, all on my website in the description. So that's the linear rods. How many we got? 6, I think, of varying lengths. We've got some little idler bearings for the belts. We've got a length of belt and the actual tooth pulleys. They are 16 tooth pulleys. I've got a whole bunch, for some reason, of thermistors for the heatbed to measure the temperature of the heatbed. I only really need one, but I think I've got 5. Yeah. Highly important, and some of the parts that may be missed off some other lists, but I literally have, apart from tools, I think on my list there is everything that is needed. And seeing as I don't have a 3D printer, I don't have any 3mm nylon filament lying around. So I bought 5 meters of 3mm nylon filament. The purpose of this is just to give a bit of strength to the wiring harnesses. So yeah, that'll run inside the wires and give them some rigidity so that they don't bend in horrible places. One of the major changes I've done to Tom's from the offset is I am not going to use a piece of wood for the bed support. This is, I don't know whether it's an original Prusa item, I don't know. I got it from Ooze Nest, again, links on the website. Basically, Tom made his out of a bit of MDF, I think, but this is probably fairly critical, really. This needs to be level. And for the price of £17 plus a little bit of postage, I think it worked out to about £20 delivered. I've got a 6mm aluminium bed support tray, frame, whatever you call it. I thought for an extra 20 quid, that's probably worth doing. So I did that. We've got a whole mess here of various lengths of, yeah, what do you call them? Hex cap screws or bolts, whatever you want to call them. Various lengths, again, all detailed on the website. Should be everything that's needed there. I have in here some springs to for the extruder to press the filament into the extruder, and the little, I think they call these Mark 8 hobbed gears that goes on the stepper motor to drive the filament through. We've got some tie wraps, lots and lots of little tie wraps. Something I've done a little bit differently to Tom, and more in keeping with the original i3 Prusa, is I've gone for, well, you call them different things. I call them half nuts. Some people call them lock nuts, but they're not lock nuts. Lock nuts is something else to me. Anyway, they are basically thinner M10 nuts, which is what is used on the original Prusa. Absolutely no difference, but it might make it look a bit neater. A whole load of M10 washers, normal washers, lots and lots of little, I think 5 meter lengths of silicone wire, linear bearings. So we've got a set of 12, and I need, what do I need? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I can't remember. Anyway, I got 12 of them, linear bearings, and I have actually sort of quickly tested this on one of these linear shafts, and yeah, not great, but it'll work. These linear shafts are actually not entirely straight, but then they were cheap. So that's the linear shafts and the linear bearings. We've got some 2 bearings, although I only need 1. 2 bearings for the extruder, which will kind of push up against that little hob gear we had a minute ago. We've got some M3 square nuts, which are M3 nuts with 4 sides, which are needed for a couple of the parts. M3 and M10 penny washers. I'm not really going to show you the boring bits because, well, yeah. M3 nylock nuts. Okay, and here's another thing that, well, yeah, it's nothing special really. So this is the heated bed. It is 3mm aluminium heated bed. Tom used some horrible thing on his, which walked all over the place. This is probably middle of the road. Again, I plan on upgrading this to the Mark 42 as soon as one of those becomes generally available. I've sort of tested this out, and really at 12 volts it's pretty lame. 24 volts is good, but we're getting into details. So there's one of them. And in here we have a box of stepper motors. Oh no, we don't. Yes we do. We have a box of 4 stepper motors, which is kind of disturbing because I need... No, 4. It's good. Yeah, 4. Bit of wiring. Anyway, they're the stepper motors. These came from the UK. I didn't really end up paying much more for those from the UK as I would have done from China. And yeah, anyway. So what else we got? We have something in here. Oh, I think this is, yeah, this is some of the actual proper 3D print bits. So we've got, surprisingly, an E3D V6 clone. It is all metal, and as far as I can tell, having never actually seen one in the flesh before, I think everything through here is the right size for 1.75mm filament. Apparently some of these clones come with variations of parts that are for 3mm and 1.75, but this all seems good to be 1.75. It's got the thermistor with it, and it's also got the heater cartridge. So that's all good. We've got, this is a 14-piece rep wrap wiring set, which I may or may not use. I'm using exactly the same limit switches, 3 of, that Tom used in his, which means that I shall be also using his modified 3D printed parts. Kind of looking back on it, I may have made a different decision on that, thinking about it now. Not entirely sure, because I could have just used normal switches, but to rule out any differences between what I'm doing and what Tom was doing on some of these more 3D printery party bits, I'm sticking to what he did. What have we got here? It's got wires on it. Oh, okay. So this is the part cooling fan. Yeah, standard 50mm 12-volt fan. And what have we got here? Oh, so this is the complete controller set. So in here we have a Arduino Mega clone, obviously. Oh no, I lied. This is sorry. This is the ramps board, or clone ramps board, whatever you want to call it. Well, there's the dodgy poly fuses. Anyway, we'll detail all this. There's a USB cable. Here is the largish LCD screen controller with a whatever you call them now. Yeah, I can't remember. A knob thing on there. A buzzer and an SD card slot, which we'll be putting on once the printer's up and running, so we can control it directly on the printer. And then of course we've got the Arduino Mega clone. We also have 5 stepper drivers. These are the rubbishy, whatever they are, see the website, 40, which I may pretty quickly upgrade to the DRV, whatever they're called. Anyway, these are stepper driver modules. So we'll just chuck all that back in there. So this is possibly one of the weak links here. We'll see. So the beauty of it really is that this can all be upgraded to use better stuff in the future. Yeah, that. Oh, okay, so this is another part that I've upgraded straight away from Tom's. These are lead screws, 8mm lead screws, rather than the 5mm threaded rod that Tom used in his. Basically, for the price of these with their lead nuts, I thought it was pretty stupid to not do it, really. I'm sure threaded rod would work. It just made me cringy to look at threaded rods doing that kind of job. So yeah, I've got proper lead screws, very cheap, but they are straight, and yeah, it all sort of seems to move pretty smoothly. So yeah, well, smoothly-ish. So there's 2 of those, which is yeah, going to be upgraded at least from Tom's. Again, pretty much in line with the original i3 Prusa. What do I have in here? Something from Amazon. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, it proved pretty hard to get hold of actually. This is the proximity sensor, or the Z-axis sensor, or the bed sensor, whatever you want to call it. I can't remember the details of this. It's a 5-volt one, which obviously it needs to be, or is it 12 volt? No, I think it's 5 volts. Pretty sure it's 5 volts. Yeah, so that senses the distance of the hot end, or print head, away from the bed, which again is pretty much in line with the standard i3 Prusa. And oh yeah, these flexible couplings for the lead screws. So yeah, they go in between the lead screws and the stepper motors. so that any slight misalignment doesn't go horribly wrong. And what have we got here? I don't even know what's in here. Still sealed up. Come back to that one. Not sure what it is. Pretty importantly, here's all the 3D printed parts. And as you can see, I've had them done in bright green. Well, the original Prusa is nice bright orange, and I don't want to copy it exactly. So these are all printed out in bright green ABS. According to, well, Prusa's design for the majority of them, but where Tom modified his slightly to accept, for example, the different limit switches, I've used his version there. So there's a whole box of 3D printed parts in there. Let's see what's in here. Oh yeah, big box, not an awful lot in it. This is just some more fixings. There's some M8 washers, some M3 nuts, and some M8 nuts. Big box for some fasteners. In fact, we can lose that big box. So that actually is kind of all the stuff, at least that is going to initially get the printer up and running. I do have some other bits and pieces. I've got some, for want of a better word, what do you call these things again? People call them different things. DuPont type connectors, various, got 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, and male and female pins to go with them. Yeah, probably need those for some of the wiring. Then here is the MOSFET to replace on the ramps board so that it doesn't give up the ghost, which probably will be completely irrelevant not too far down the line, because I'm going to probably take away the direct control of the heat bed away from the ramps board, just use the ramps board to control, yeah, maybe a external solid state or something like that. But anyway, we'll get to that. I also have here a car, bike, boat fuse holder. So it takes 4 standard blade fuses and a whole bunch of standard blade fuses, and this is to replace the poly fuses. I'll break them out. I'll basically put some wires on the board, break it off of the board, mount this separately so that we have fuses that are a little bit more reliable, can take the power up to 40 amps and everything in between, more or less, and yeah, can be replaced if they pop. And last but not least is actually an old Raspberry Pi in a box that happened to be lying around that will eventually, hopefully not too far in the future, have Octoprint installed on it so I can control the thing over the network. And that's it. That's all the parts. All, like I keep saying, all of these parts, the links to where I got them from, actual, not just to the website, but to the where possible. And I think in all cases, as far as I remember, a link to exactly each one of these products is on my website. The link is down below. All the prices are there. And so in the next video, we're going to start building it.